this meta kind of sucks. I think this is the least enjoyable Fab meta I've ever played, and it's up there for a least enjoyable meta I've played in any card game. The games are flippy and high variance, the decks are all non-interactive, player skill isn't the biggest determining factor on the outcome of games, even a wash content creator like me can do well in this meta. It's good for casual players, and it's great for viewing, but if I'm spending over $1,000 to fly across the world, I'm a little less interested in my tournament run being largely determined by coin flips. So in this video, let's talk about why I don't think this is a good meta, and why I don't think meta diversity has anything to do with the issue, what caused the meta to not be good to begin with. Spoiler alert, it's not just Zen. The pendulum effect that happened in this meta from the previous one, how to fix it, and what I would like to see, and lastly, a message directly to LSS. So let's jump into it. Why does this meta suck? There's two big factors in this. First is gameplay and the quality of it, and the other is randomness. At the PT, I was joking all weekend that it just felt like us flipping coins. First, you have to win the gem roulette and win that coin flip because every deck right now has polarizing matchups. Then, depending on the deck that you're playing, you have to actually win the flip of who goes first. For example, if you're playing a Zen Mirror, it's heavily favored going second. Then you have to win the flip of the top 10 or so cards of your deck being better than your opponents because the games are so fast. Which then goes into the quality of games point. Every round you're either sitting in front of a deck that's not going to let you play the game, or a deck that's trying to win in the first couple turns. Both of these gameplay patterns can create a feeling of ships passing in the night, where neither player is actually trying to play a two-player game. They both just want to do their game plan and ignore whatever the opponent is doing. If Fab is a fighting game, then this meta feels a lot like that thing in Street Fighter where you're just trying to beat up the car. It's very demotivating playing a format where skill edges matter much less than previous metas. You can see your opponent make mistakes, and it just doesn't matter half the time. Them missing a few points of damage by playing a suboptimal card or mis-sequencing just doesn't matter if they're attacking for 35, or you're playing a matchup so polarizing that they could just skip turn and they'd still win the game. I think it's okay for us to have fast decks and fast formats. Not every meta should be about grinding your opponent out in second cycle. It's also important for these faster decks to exist for accessibility to newer players, since linear aggro decks are easy to pick up and play. But also from a meta standpoint, they can keep certain strategies in check like dirtily combo decks. The issue is more to do with the power ceiling of Zen and the ease of access to it. If it was once in a blue moon that the Zen did the bananas turn, I could accept that. But you get the funny turn every game. It starts on the bloody board with your equipment, and that also punishes you for even trying to play the game into the Zen. By attacking the Zen, you're giving him a chance to block with his equipment and OTK you on the crackback, so your best play is just do nothing and pass? Getting punished for playing the game is just such an ass-backwards thing to me. An argument I heard from people defending this meta was that it was a diverse meta. No one's complaining about it being a one-deck meta. Let me put that to rest, which is where I think a lot of this point spawned from. The argument is a complete non sequitur. The problem is gameplay being bad and the gem roulette. This discussion came up a while ago too on Twitter. Diversity does not mean it's a good meta. The more items on a menu doesn't make it a better restaurant. The quality of the meal matters more. And Flesh and Blood is a 5-star restaurant, not some fast food joint with a $1 menu. A diverse meta isn't a bad thing either though. It's not my personal preference admittedly, but if anything, I think this meta is an example of the meta diversity making it subjectively worse. The polarizing nature of most of the playable decks and the diversity of the decks that you can face pushes the format deeper into a gem roulette format, which I don't see as a positive. Diverse metas can be good though. I thought the heavy hitters meta was very good, and it was very diverse. I think diverse metas are at their best when they reward you for playing a deck that you're very experienced with, and then it becomes a format about deck mastery, which I really enjoy. So, how did we get to this point, though? The evolution of this meta is actually pretty interesting. So, first, the Boogeyman Zen. It pushed out any deck that could not disrupt him or go faster than him. The meta then turned into a dual arms race front. On the one side, you had opponents trying to have an arms race of making it so your opponent was incapable of playing the game. On the other, it's decks trying to go as fast as possible and ignore what your opponent is doing. In both cases, neither strategy is interested in actually playing the game. Either I'm going to kill you so you can't play the game, or I'm going to make it so you can't play the game at all. The meta then developed into a ships passing in the night metagame, where basically you're just both watching each other do your thing, and you're just like, Hello? Goodbye. Now, the next aspect of the meta is new. Zen being the top dog of the meta, naturally new being a predator to that deck increase in play rate. New's play patterns similarly invalidate a lot of strategies just like Zen does. She preys on a lot of decks that would prey on Zen, such as Guardian. And then, Zen preys on a lot of decks that New doesn't want to face, creating a weird symbiotic relationship with each other, further pushing the meta into a ships passing in the night meta. Unfortunately, a lot of the decks that New pushes out would help balance out the metagame a bit, as I mentioned, like Guardian, where it kind of forces people into a more honest game of, like, hey, you can't just ignore what I'm doing. There's this crush effect on the stack. How are you going to deal with this? Something I heard people saying was people complaining about this meta were just upset their deck isn't good right now. I had multiple people say that to me. I guess they didn't know Prism was one of the top decks this meta? Decks coming and going isn't a problem. That's natural in a metagame. My point is, decks in this metagame aren't interested in playing a two-player game, and to me, that's not fun. That isn't why I play Flesh and Blood. Flesh and Blood is a game of inches, where you have to muster up every ounce of your strength to defeat your opponent. Every card matters. Every choice matters. Now, I'm not trying to yuck your yum. If you like this meta, that's fine. I'm not here to take that from you. But I don't think it's conducive to competitive games, and it's not the game that I was sold. It's not the Flesh and Blood that I love. Now let's talk about the pendulum effect from the previous meta. In the last meta, a major complaint of the game was it was getting too mathy. A lot of players wanted to go back to doing powerful things, not just trying to outvalue their opponent by 1 point every turn. Oh, I got boots value. Got him. I'm going to win this game now. I agree with this. I think worse than a format being broken, the biggest cardinal sin a game can make is being boring. And I felt like the gameplay of that format was getting a little boring. We wished on that monkey's paw, and we got exactly what we wanted. Now the format's powerful again. The problem is that pendulum swung too far in that direction. We went past doing powerful things and skipped right to being broken. So you may hear people complaining now, and it sounds like the crying wolf. No matter what, we will never be happy. And I'm sure there's some people like that. I can't speak for everyone on this, but that is not my sentiment. When I'm complaining about this format, I want to find a middle ground. I don't want a boring math format, but I also want decks to be able to do, have exciting turns. I think a great example of the power level I would like to see us go back to was both the Uprising format and the Outsiders format. There were powerful decks and powerful cards. Sure, you could point to a few things being overpowered or their impact of the meta being oppressive, such as Lexi. But my point is the overall power level and the gameplay of these formats were pretty good. Games were engaging and exciting without being broken. And there was a lot of skill expression in these formats. All that to say is, I just want to find some middle ground, not the polar extremes that we've seen in the past, this format and the last one. Now, I don't want to complain about the meta without giving any solutions. So let's talk about a few potential fixes for this meta. First of all, the Bonds ban. I just want to talk about that for a sec. I think that was a good ban. Though I a little bit disagree with the timing on it. The ban fundamentally changed deck building a lot, and with the PT being so close to the ban, I'm not a fan of that, but what's done is done. The real issue with Zen is how explosive the big turns are. Zen is able to block armor, double Art of War, and present lethal really early on in the game. Traverse and Striders are big enablers of this. Traverse is just a silly card. When I saw this, I was in disbelief that Pouncing Lynx got power crept. I think Traverse would have been fine if you had to pick between blocking or searching, just like Lynx, but it's not the world we live in. I don't expect Traverse to actually get banned, but I at least want to point out that it's busted. Striders, on the other hand, I think is a far more reasonable ban, especially since you have Pouncing Paws to replace it. The big issue with Striders is the fact that it puts the Tiger in your hand, not in Banish. This lets you use that Tiger to pay the cost of other cards, cheating the resource system of the game. Speaking of cheating on costs, the real culprit that needs banning. Art of War. Also, by extension, Ancestral Harmony. As I mentioned, the explosive turns that Zen has are enabled by armor and these anthem effects. If you remove the anthems, you can weather the storm of the crazy turn. Zen's overall turn-to-turn damage, the way that he's currently built, isn't very good. You really struggle to play on rate most of the time outside of your crazy turns. But it doesn't matter, because your crazy turn goes so above rate that nothing else in the game matters. Being able to invalidate the rest of the game like that is pretty frustrating. Also, from a math perspective, these cards are bananas. You banish a free Tiger to Art of War, it's literally just Pot of Greed, and then the Anthem effect is worth 5 to 10 damage? All for one card? What? Removing these crazy turns would give far more counterplay to Zen. And Art of War is honestly a card that's been an issue in the past. It's an enabler for degeneracy. It's needed a ban for a long time. Also, Harmony being a generic ninja card will likely be a problem again in the future. It's the type of card that every ninja card from now on will have to be designed around, just like Bonds. Hopefully we see generic class cards like these in the future be a little bit more restrictive in deck building, either by making them a specialization or some other design choice that they'll make with them to make it a little harder to just splash. Also, while we're on this topic, briefly want to touch on talent cards. There's a pattern with talent sets leading to high power metagames. It's really easy to point at that correlation and say talent cards are the problem. I don't think that's the case. By gaining a talent, you do get a deeper card pool, but most of the talent cards in the history of the game aren't even that good. Of course, there's exceptions like the channels and ice cards, but most of them on their own weren't good enough. The payoffs is what made them good. I also think that if Zen didn't specifically interact with combo, he wouldn't have been nearly as oppressive. Keep all of his cards the same and the way they work, just change the word combo to a different keyword. Bombo. It doesn't matter. Just something else that does the same thing, but it's not literally the word combo. Like how Phi has Rupture that he cares about. You can still choose to put the combo cards in your deck and the combo payoff cards, but Zen would not specifically interact with those cards. Now lastly, a message directly to LSS. I'm sure someone there is watching this. I realize this is just a moment in time in the meta, and this won't be forever. I have absolute faith in your ability to right the ship. I've never doubted you guys for a second. Even on the worst day, Flesh and Blood is still the best TCG in the market. And my criticisms, they come from a place of passion. I care about the game, I want to see it grow, I want to see it succeed. But if I don't like the direction the game is going, I'm going to say something. I'm sorry I can't always sing your praises, but it goes both ways. When I say Part the Mistveil is the best draft set ever, you know I mean it. I don't just blindly shill, but I also say when something's off. Like, I'm trying to be honest here with my opinion on things. You're never going to find a stauncher believer in the game. Fab is just such an amazing game, and I look forward to seeing the future of the game. Thank you so much for all of your hard work at LSS. I look forward to seeing the amazing card design in Rosetta, and I look forward to seeing everyone in Japan for Worlds. Thank you so much for watching. Also, please ban Scab Skins.